Hi Hunter, thank you so much for joining me in this podcast episode. Really appreciate it, man. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Russell. How are you doing?
Yeah, doing great. I'm absolutely pumped up for our podcast episode today. And yeah, learn more about you and your journey, how you've gone through failure to success and building your businesses. So yeah, we're gonna right into it. And let's talk about from very beginning of like who you was in a childhood, is the mindset you had like being an entrepreneur or business owner, or like you wanted to be like a doctor, professional athlete, or something like that.
Yeah, it's funny. So it really all started for me when I was like in elementary school. Um, I don't know what it was, but I've always just been a very curious
hmm
young man. And I think really like it hit off for me when I wanted to get in business. I was gifted a set of encyclopedias and I just dove right in.
Yeah.
And I'd carry those around everywhere. I had a little red wagon, and me and my buddies would build forts, and I'd have my books with me. And I was a nerd for sure. And I got my first job when I was like 8 years old.
Right.
I really wanted to work. And, my parents were skeptical about it. And I was just like, I could not shake the idea of making my own money. So
hmm
I started working for this guy. He was a former professor at Harvard, and he was a great mentor for me to have. I mean, I did little odd jobs around his property, cleaning up leaves and picking trash up and things like that. And
Yeah.
most of, I think the job was really me getting to spend time with Bill and actually, learning about things that, my grandparents and my family weren't quite interested in. This guy was a pure play academic, and he was very involved in business. He actually was business partners with T. Boone Pickens to build a giant wind farm in Texas. And he was just a great guy for me to be around. And that's where I got interested in stocks. So we would talk stocks together, and I had like a very limited understanding. I mean, I was like 10
Yeah.
years old when I got into it, and I hadn't bought my first stock yet, but we talk every day about what companies were good and what I liked. And eventually, a couple of years later, I finally just had enough money saved up that I was ready to open my own brokerage account. My dad wouldn't do it. He was very against stocks. He's like, put it in a
Yeah.
savings account. You're so young, you don't know what you're doing. And I was really persistent, and he didn't ever say yes. But I found out that I could open a custodial account as long as I had a legal guardian
hmm
sign for it. So my grandparents actually, I convinced them to help me open this brokerage account with E-Trade. I was 12 years old, and that began a whole different like ball game for me. I just really got into corporate finance and started reading 10Ks, and it took off. I just was really passionate about everything. And about that time, I'm like super young.
Yeah.
So at the time, it was like the 2008 recession had just kind of got over with. And it was a really great time for me to buy stocks. And that was like, when I got into finance. And, I kind of evolved. I stopped taking summer odd jobs, and I started doing kind of things for myself. And my first legitimate business was a little business called Leather Slingers Leather Work. Not a great name, it's hard to say, but
Yeah.
I was making wallets and belts in my bedroom. I had a pretty decent sized bedroom, so I had my dad get me like an 8 foot folding table, and that's where I would do all my leather work.
Yeah.
And I did okay. I made a couple $1,000s a month selling belts and wallets for a few months, and it was really fun. I got to meet a lot of people, and that was my first time like being in business. I was looking at cost of
What
goods.
year was it?
Gosh, what year was that? It had to be like 2013 or
Okay.
so when I started that. So
About 9 years back,
really,
right?
what's that?
About 9 years back.
Yeah, somewhere around there. I was in junior high school, going into high school. So that went for a while, and I really enjoyed it. But at the same time, it was a tough business. I didn't understand advertising, so I think I really missed out on the golden era of social media marketing. Now
Yeah.
that I look back on it, because customer acquisition costs were so low at that time that like I could have really done some crazy stuff. But that just wasn't the way it was going to go for me. I think God had a different plan.
Sure.
And I met a guy. He's a middle-aged guy, and he had a pretty successful landscaping company. And he was willing to pay a kid with no driver's license $13 an hour. And I mean, right now the U.S. minimum wage is still 7.25, and some states have it higher. But 13 bucks an hour, and you're just barely in high school. That's pretty good. And he had lots of hours for me, so I was able to like really start like working, and that's where I learned to operate equipment, run a shovel, and it was hard work and it was always hot. You know, growing up here in Texas, we never catch a break in the summer, and that's usually when I was working. So that was kind of it. You know, I mean, as a young guy, I was always fascinated with money. I was the first person in my school to get an iPhone when I was in like
Yeah.
fifth grade. The school that I went to, it was kindergarten through 12th grade. So it was high school, elementary, all in one building. There's about 150 students. So when I was in fifth grade with an iPhone, that's a pretty big accomplishment. I mean, not even high school kids have one. And I used my money to buy it. And I took my grandpa actually because he's the only one I could convince to take me to AT&T to set up a phone plan. And ever since then, I've had my own phone plan. It's kind of funny that that's how it started for me. I have the same plan with AT&T for like 12 years now or 13 years. So
Yeah.
it's wild. So go through school. I like do the kind of fun, like, you know, really free and easy thing at the end of high school. Go to college and I hated it. It was the absolute worst. I mean, I don't know. I just felt like it was high school 2.0 or something. And there
Mm,
was so much more of the world out there that I really need to experience. And I had realized, you know, really from an early age that I'm an experiential learner. Like I can learn on the fly, and that's the best place for me to learn. I'm a little ADD, so it's hard for me to sit there and look at books and be like excited to learn unless it's
yeah.
something I'm passionate about. So and I've never met anybody that's passionate about U.S. history to this day. Maybe some museum operators can chime in and let me know that there's some passionate historians out there. But yeah, college wasn't for me. And after the first semester, I was done. I was ready to go. And so I went. And when I first got out, I was kind of directionless. I knew that I was doing the right thing, and
Yeah.
I just needed to get some real world experience. So I started working back for the landscaper, and you know that went for a little while. And I just had this desire to do better with my life. And my granddad had worked in the oil and gas industry for like
Mhm.
40 years. So it's some really great connections to get me out there. And I think that's really where the journey kicked off. I got my first corporate job and I saw how much of a hellhole it was. I hated it. You were just a little tiny number.
Yeah.
And I was in charge of selling oil from this is an oil lease. So I managed about 85 oil wells and I would check them every day and make sure that the semi trucks would come and pick up the oil or ship it through a pipeline.
Yeah.
And I was watching them make, you know, tens of millions of dollars a month. And I was making about $6,000 a month. And I was like, this isn't right.
Yeah.
So I started looking for a new job, and I actually landed with the largest steel distributor in the world. They sell pipe, valves, and fittings for oil and gas and other industrial applications.
Right.
And that's where I really got into big business. I saw how much money was really out there.
Mm,
Generally, all the projects that we worked on, I was on a projects team. So we would work on, you know, projects that were the capex was $25 million plus just in steel. So
wow.
that gives you an idea of the scope. These are $100
Yeah.
million plus projects that I'm working on. I'm seeing this money is just being thrown around, and it's all different companies and not just blue chip names that you know from home. Little small private equity backed outfits were doing these huge projects, and I realized there's a lot of money out there,
Yeah.
and that kind of got my wheels turning. A guy called me from Houston. He ran a steel company, a really small startup, and he's like, "Hey, do you want to help me run this business? We're going to launch in the Permian Basin, and I'd like you to run operations out there." And I was like, "Heck yeah, sign me up," because I had that entrepreneurial kind of mindset, and working for a startup company and being able to run some things, that was my outlet. You know, I had plenty
Mm,
of experience. I knew how business worked, and I was a good leader. That's kind of the person I was always growing up was, you know, at the front of the charge. I was picking out where we were putting our forts, and to this day, I'm still leading from the front. And I was always the first one with a shovel in my hand. So I was excited. And we got started, and things were really great, actually. And, you know, time went by. Another headhunter called me with another opportunity to do some great things. And this time it was working for a hotel operator, Oyo. They were a huge Sequoia venture-backed
yeah.
hotel startup out of India, and they were booming. They at that time they had taken over the market, and they were the number one hotelier. Literally in only 2 years, they were able to beat like every major hotel outlet.
Wow.
Unfortunately, I took the job, got a great salary, and had an awesome commission structure.
Yeah.
But more importantly, I was working for a tech-enabled business, and that really gave me an opportunity to really understand native to me to be on a computer, and technology is kind of a part of my life, but I wouldn't say I've ever thought about it from a productivity or an efficiency phase. And that's what oil was doing to the hotel business. Basically, they were like amalgamating, independent hotels and giving them a brand to fly under,
Mm.
and using technology to help, adjust the rates naturally. So, when there was a lot of demand, the rates would go up based on this algorithm. And so there was a lot of technology there. And I was just seeing how like it was game changing. Like if they were able to do that in 2 years, you know, I couldn't imagine like where we're going to be in the future. So
Yeah.
I worked for them for a few months and things started to fall apart. And it was pretty aware like coronavirus was just starting to like take off in China.
Yeah.
And we got a letter from the CEO basically saying that this was something that was going to be a big issue. And it wasn't but 3 weeks later after that email that, the pandemic really
Mm.
took a toll, especially in Asia, which was like the strongest market that we had at the time. And they started with mass layoffs. I think the first day of layoffs, they laid off like 2,000 people, and I
Wow.
was one of those people. They gave me a nice severance package,
Yeah.
and me and my business partners had been talking about starting a business for a few months. We had kind of started laying the groundwork out, talking to people about what we were going to do,
Hmm.
and this just turbocharged it. They gave me 6 months of salary, and we're like, "Oh, you don't have a job anymore." But I was loaded with money, so I was like, "Okay, here we go." And that was when I put my head down and I was ready to start Mariah. And that's kind of the beginning of my journey, I would say now, and where I'm at. I think once I started Mariah a couple years ago, right at the beginning of 2020, late 2019, I it just clicked and it just felt right. And the first couple of months were tough. We
Mm.
didn't do anything. We weren't able to get any clients. It was really hard. And I think that it was the naivety like that we had going into it, that it will be easy to get
Yeah.
people to pay us. And it wasn't, especially as a consultant. There's so many consulting firms and there's some major like high quality players. So,
Yeah.
you're this new young team that is trying to prove that you have something to offer these business leaders. And it's tough when you're young. And I still face this today. I mean,
Any
I'm a
business
very
is tough,
knowledgeable.
isn't it? Like when you're starting out, it's just building your name out there, building a client base, building a prospect list. It just takes some time in order to get to where you want to be, right? First 2 years, it's like 95 of the 5% of the businesses go out of business in the first 2 years. So it's like a survival mode for first 2 years to build your reputation and sticking to it, right?
Absolutely. I think the only thing that might have been beneficial is having a few extra gray hairs,
Yeah.
and I think that that's the biggest challenge for young people. And I talk to a lot of young founders like
Mm.
on a regular basis. And it's just kind of that I think it's an old school mentality about experience and how, like, if you look back in the past, the way people like gain knowledge and experience was very like physical and in the moment.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's very easy for me to hop on Google and search anything that I want and get an access to not only like a wealth of knowledge, but a wealth of high quality knowledge. And
Yeah.
I think that's what puts so many young people that you see today that are so successful. They've just been able to leverage the ability to like gain knowledge and experience so quickly. What used to take 10 years of experience to learn a type of business, you can do that in a few months if you put your head down.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say that those few months and 10 years of experience or anything, but I think what I'm mainly trying to get at is that those key concepts and key words and kind of like the nomenclature, those are the things that kind of take time to learn in like a native setting. But
Yeah.
on the computer, you're open. You can be an expert even if you're not. I mean, so you can read stuff that's way above your level, and you might
Mm.
not understand anything, but you can. And I think that was the thing, right? Is for me, I was just gaining this experience, just being so curious and just so interested in learning that that's kind of where I went. And I just continue to have that desire for knowledge. I do enjoy books, but I would say most of my reading is on the computer. And I don't think there's any reason to knock it.
Yeah.
But like I guess I get back to the point about young people because I think this would be really important for your listeners and something that I think was some great advice for me. It's like, even though you're young and you have these people that are really kind of against you, I would say, not in a bad way. They just it's hard to trust. You imagine you're, a 50-year-old man, and you have this, 25-year-old kid trying to tell you what's going on.
Yeah.
And it's really hard for them to understand that you can know that stuff, even though
Mm.
they don't know it, you can still understand it. And for me, like in our business specifically, to kind of touch on what Mariah does, we're a sell side M&A advisor. So we help people sell their businesses. So for me, like coming in with my fresh face and young kind of energy, sometimes, founders kind of question that, and they wonder, how much experience do you really have? How much do you know? Are you able to even do this?
Yeah.
And it's I've been able to prove that for my clients. And I think that, when you're young, you have a lot of walls to climb. And it's just time, it's time in the market and not timing. You're never going to have the perfect day to start your business or the perfect day doing sales. It's just about being committed to like sticking with whatever you do. And I think that's
Yeah.
kind of where technology might be a negative piece of like our society. Is it's really easy to get distracted. And I think that's why, so many business owners fail, because they're not focused. I have never questioned, Mariah and its ability to be successful. And I think that's why I stuck with it, right? There were so
Mm.
many opportunities for me to like walk away. I mean, if you're the boss, you don't make money unless you are producing. And
True.
if you're not focused, it's really hard to stay producing. And I think another thing is there's just everything is so filled with failure that you don't realize it because of the success you have eventually. But
Yeah.
if you look back and like thinking about, getting started, all of the people I've ever talked to, all the proposals I've sent out, those are all little failures along the way. But every time that I failed, there was a small evolution inside of me, and it was more of a mindset thing. It wasn't like, oh, well, maybe I can just change up this. That was a part of it, and making little tweaks and edits to what you do
Yeah.
might be the solution. But 9 times out of 10, the best solution really comes from within you and kind of your own personal development. And so I
Yeah,
guess,
it's
to touch on
improving
earlier,
yourself, isn't it? Improving yourself and just moving forward one step at a time and just stay on the line. Like what's your vision is, what's your focus needs to be. There's so many distractions. You've been talking about focus a lot. And it is so important to use in the business world because right now, like I said, in technology and internet is so good and at the same time it's so bad as well because we are getting so much information. You can go on a Google, there is like a millions of way you can make money, million things you can do, millions way of getting clients. And if you go all over the place, you wouldn't get anything done, right? And you get distracted and burn out yourself and you're gonna make those mistakes. And even though the mistakes like you learning, like those proposals you're sending the clients, they didn't sign up with you, you learn from the mistake wherever you didn't do what you didn't ask or something, like you can improve yourself and make it impact and moving forward, right?
absolutely. The way that I talk to my team about this is I like to refer to us as practitioners.
Yeah.
The reason why is because every day is an opportunity for us to practice our craft and improve our abilities. And it's not often used outside of a medical or clinical setting, the word practitioner. But
Yeah.
I think more people need to view themselves as a practitioner of whatever it is. And I think, I'm assuming that your audience is mostly like young people like us, and they're not quite, understanding of that the time in your life, it seems like in the moment that time is so precious and valuable. But when you look at statistics and you realize that you more than likely, God willing, you'll live 70 plus years. And unfortunately, in our high paced, technologically embedded world, we live in milliseconds, So it's really hard to like pull yourself out of that and realize like I've got years to go. And
Mhm.
I think for me, like one of my childhood heroes was Warren Buffett, and he didn't become a billionaire until he was in his 50s. And
Yeah.
I think so many people don't even look at that and realize that, you know, whatever you're trying to do or whatever your goals are, don't make them about money. Because, like you said, there are so many ways to make money that if your goal is to make money, you're going to fail because
True.
it's just too easy to get off of one horse and get on another one. And if you consistently do that throughout your life, you're going to realize that, hey, there's no more horses and I'm out of time. And it's the unfortunate part of life, is that I think, the people that win, they stay committed to what they're doing,
Mm.
and they're guided by principles. For me, starting the firm was to help other business owners and give myself freedom from the corporate world. Box number one, easily checked. I'm a success
Yeah.
by that metric. I'm not a part of the corporate world. Box number two is a never ending goal. I did not quantify how many business leaders I wanted to help in my career. It could have been one. And then that's a success for me. And maybe moving on to the next thing might have happened. But since it's open ended the way it is, it never ends. And I can only improve my abilities and scale up my firm. And yeah, I think for me, like, I really like to live in those failures, and not in a way where you're like spending a lot of time thinking about it, but trying to fail. If you're not trying to fail and like do things that are outside of what you know you can succeed at, you'll never improve. And I can apply that to everything. I mean, this year my garden in my backyard is not very good. And another year, and maybe I will have the improvements right. Over the winter, I plan on, refreshing my soil
Yeah.
and doing a lot of work in the garden to make it better next year. And if you take that approach with your whole life and you look and realize that, hey, not every day's promised, but if you look at statistics, you're going to make it to the next day, especially when you're as young as we are. So plant those seeds,
Mm.
repair the soil, and do the work within yourself to, to find what your focus is, and your principles, and understand who you are. I think for me, like coming along this journey, I spent a lot of time lost, in who I was, and had a lot of identity crisis throughout my whole life. Just, different styles, different friends, new music, new hobbies. And that's great, because if you're not trying all of those things and dipping your toes into the water,
You wouldn't
you'll
know,
never
right?
know who you
Yeah.
really are. And I think that one thing that is like a part of like our culture today is really the apprehension to do new things. Cultural appropriation and these kind of terms fly around, or clout chasers. I don't know if you've ever heard that one, but people, have all of these terms for people that are just trying out new things. You're a
Yeah.
poser if you wear skater clothes and you're not a skater. And that is small minded, thinking. You can't live your life like judging others based off of their attempts at their own
Mm.
life. And I think that that's a huge issue, especially for entrepreneurs. Is
Yeah.
we are always looking at the leaders in business, what they do, trying to mirror what they do. And what you don't realize is they were the only ones doing that at the time, and that's why they are who they are.
Yeah.
So if you want to be like them, you have to follow your own path there. Now, there's a great lessons to learn from everybody, and I'm 100% for like looking at up to people and following them. But I think you have to look and follow from a distance and with perspective. You can't look from your own shoes at them. Kind of try to view it from their
Yeah, just to
perspective.
learn from them, right? Learn a few things from one person, learn from another thing from another person, and then be yourself. Like create your own version of yourself. Like who is Hunter, who is Russell? I'm trying to be Russell myself. I'm not trying to be Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos, but I'm gonna take few things from their life, because their life is not great as we think as they are. Because when you think about like Jeff Bezos recently got divorced, you need to think about, and Elon Musk got divorced like a two, three times. Probably his family life is in a different state, and he even tells people working 80 or 100 hours a week. No one shouldn't do it, right? He sleeps in his factory and everything. These things are not healthy. And even though I know like you're a big fan of like a Warren Buffett you mentioned earlier, myself also, like he drinks like a Coca-Cola every single day. He having a fast food every single day. These things we as a normal person couldn't really do. It depends who you are in my body. Because I got diagnosed with a IBD, inflammatory bowel disease. So if I'm having like a Coca-Cola every single day, what's going to happen? I'll end up in like a hospital, or probably I'm going to be dead because I'm going to be bleeding through my bowel. So you have to find out who you are and everything. Probably a few things you can get advice from, or like you can mirror themselves, like a Warren Buffett, how he invests. That's the great way to think about it. How Elon Musk lead his team, or being creative. You can learn another thing from that, and then you can create to yourself like who you want to be and what works best for you. Probably making $2 million a year doesn't really uh, resonate with yourself because you're happy with the $100,000 a year in profit or your lifestyle expense. So why are you trying to create something like $1 billion business or $2-3 million business when you actually don't need it? Because you probably like doing sports, you like spending time with your kids, probably playing video games all the time, or probably you're a spiritual person focusing on other things, right? It's just you needs to be ask yourself who you wants to be.
Absolutely. I think that that's so awesome. It's that mimicry.
Yeah,
We look to others to, find these answers or shortcuts. And what I found, like, so I work with a lot of successful business people. They build
yeah,
their business to a point where it's worth selling. And almost all of them, it's so crazy, are happy accidents. They're
mm,
accidents. They did not expect it to work out. They went with their gut. They stayed focused and they stayed plugged in, worked out by accident. Now, were there intentional things all along the way that they put in place to make it happen?
yeah,
Absolutely. But there is no way I can sit with a piece of paper here and give myself a roadmap to $1 million and it is 100% accurate. It's
yeah,
not never going to happen. So when we're looking at starting a business, and this is really kind of for your early stage founders or people that may be touching, like wanting to start a business, when you're looking at that, if you're focused on the money aspect or any sort of like social credibility, you're going the wrong direction.
yeah,
If you're focused on what makes you happy and what maybe, I mean, really happiness, I don't want to add anything and dilute that, because if you're looking at what makes you happy as a part of your business, then it will work out. I work with inventors, I work with people that are passionate about plants, and I work with people that are passionate about healthcare. Surprisingly enough, I don't have that passion, but some people have dedicated their whole lives in the industry and they love
mm,
it, right?
yeah,
And so that's where they got the idea to start their business, not from a blog post, best 100 business ideas, or not thinking about how could I make the most money. That's later. You worry about that later when you're
yeah,
starting. You focus on, like, okay, what's the roadmap to my happiness? And just like our firm's principles about breaking the corporate chains and providing quality service to people, that makes me happy. It's nothing's better than to like have somebody brag on me. And I hate to like seem
yeah,
narcissistic, but like it's a really good feeling like when somebody's like, did a really great job for me, Hunter. This is awesome. I really appreciate it. So on and so forth, right?
mhm,
That makes me feel so good. It gives me value in ways that no paycheck could ever do
yeah,
for me. And then the same thing. It's like, I built my business for my happiness and the money followed. And as long as you kind of have that focus on something that is real and relative to you, because money is just it's just a scorekeeper.
yeah,
It's not, you know, comes and goes. And your happiness and your own mental health, they don't leave you. If you're in a terrible state and, suffering from depression, that doesn't just walk away one day.
mm,
You have to try to fix that. And I think that's the thing, right? It's like, if you're focused, you know, personally on yourself when you're like looking at business, you're going to be a lot happier that you did. And you're not going to fail as much. And
yeah,
business failures are expensive, not only in time, but money, friendships, relationships, everything. You throw everything out of the window. Elon Musk in a factory, sleeping in his factory. Do you think he has a great social life? No. Do
no,
you think he wants that? Probably not. Somebody that's willing to do that
yeah,
probably isn't interested in those things. And if you're trying to mimic yourself, and like just to go back to the mirror idea and like taking advice from people and that unhealthiness, unfortunately, you might say, I just need to stay in the office. I just need to keep cold calling. I don't have enough hours in. That's not it. You're saying, I want to be like Elon Musk, so I'm going to work 80 hours a week, but you achieve nothing, not for
yeah,
yourself at least. So you may accomplish things for your business,
yeah,
but at the end of the day, like your own personal happiness is what you're really shooting for. I think when people want
definitely,
money, stuff, and freedom, it's their own happiness. So
yeah.
I think if you get your principles aligned and you realize what you're really doing something for, it starts to make a whole lot more sense.
Yeah, totally agree with you, brother. So yeah, Hunter, we are coming to the end of this podcast episode. It was great having a conversation with you and learn about your business, your mistakes, and also your success as well. So those who's listening, if anyone wants to know more about your company and learn more about yourself, what's the best place to find you?
So I always tell people to go to my website, but here recently, I've really been loving LinkedIn. I think it's a great social media platform that's focused on collaborating in business. And if you're not on LinkedIn, you can find me there at Hunter AlleMand. That's ALLEMAND. And hey, I'm happy to talk with you 15 minutes, anybody, um, or set you up with one of my associates who can have a conversation about your business idea, and it will get to me. So I'm always posting fresh content on there every day, and I'm always happy to have new contacts. So thank you so much, Rassel, for coming on the show, and I hope I brought something for your listeners.
Yeah, thank you. Really appreciate it, man. You are so valuable. And yeah, I wish you best of luck with your new business as well and in your life as well. And hope you have a wonderful day ahead, man.
Yeah, thank you so much, and I hope the same for you too.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. So that's a wrap, guys. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast episode with Hunter. And if anyone wants to reach out to Hunter and learn more about his company and himself, go visit his social media platform on LinkedIn and also check out his website as well. Yeah, so until the next episode, I'll talk to you next soon. Thank you.